All right, so we're in part three of uh, factors that shape culture. Okay, and I'm not going to review all this. I'm just going to jump right into where we are. This would be, I think you have on your sheet there, slide number 7. This would be family relations. Okay, family relations. Uh, and a strong family is part of a strong culture. The family unit itself, and we've talked about many different things, and some of this may be repetitive, but I think it's important. So the very first thing we talk about here is two parents versus a single parent home, and there's all kinds of reasons that you may not have a two parent home. And what this really gets down to is what is often referred to as the nuclear family. And we talked about this a little bit in past sessions. A family that is a biblical family would be God has God at the head, or Jesus at the head of the father, father head of the wife, wife over the children. And I've heard one pastor do it this way: Jesus is over the father, father's over the mother, mother's over the children, children over the dog, dog over the cat, cat over the mouse, mouse over the cheese. Okay, that's just how it's supposed to work. Okay, but there's a reason for that. And you get into all kinds like that. This is such a broad aspect. I don't know how much of it we're going to get into. We'll get as far as we can. If we need to stop, we'll stop. Okay, but what we're really talking about here is there's all kinds of reasons why you might have a single parent home. There are family members that die tragically. Maybe it's a disease, maybe it's cancer, maybe it's a car wreck, but you have for whatever reason, both parents are not there, and the family is robbed of that for one reason or another. And then there's another reason for a single parent family home, and that is where parents don't take responsibility for being parents. And most often in our society, at least, the burden of raising a child tends to fall on the mother. Not exclusively in those situations, but it seems to definitely lean that direction. But there's a reason that two parents family homes tend to be better for the children long term. There's this is, like I said, this is such a deep well. I'm kind of nervous to dive in all of it in a single session, but we're going to try. The first thing that you have when you have both parents there is there's a loving support system. And me and my wife talk about this all the time, about how we often, it's kind of like tag team wrestling. One just gets all they can get, and then they just tag the other one in, and that's with a two-parent system. And it's hard. We got 3 kids. I mean, it's rough. But for a family that only has a single parent, they don't have anybody to tag in or tag out. And you might say, well, there's parents and grandparents and things like that. And we see that actually a lot in our culture now, where you have a baby have a baby, and then it's up to the grandparents to then raise the child. And it's like, that's not healthy either. There's a reason that mothers and fathers are necessary. But in Colossians chapter 3, verses 18 through 21, it kind of gives a structure for the family. And it says in verse 18, wives, submit to your husbands, as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. That's a lot in a little couple verses there, okay? But what you have here, the two-parent unit, why that works is because you get in a home, in a family, you have both the leadership of the father and the leadership of the mother, and children get exposed to both. Young women, I have daughters and I have a son. The daughters get to see how a mother is supposed to act, how a woman is supposed to act. And this may get me shut down on social media, but a woman gets to learn how to be a woman, guess what? From a woman. And then the young man gets to learn how to be a man from, guess what? A man. As much as a mother may love her son, she will never be able to train him up to be a man. Now, there are lots of people that step up in those roles, uncles and cousins and other coaches and stuff like that that help and stuff. But the same thing, a father will never be able to teach his daughter how to be a woman. God in his infinite wisdom said, you know what, I got husbands and I got wives, and if they have children, they can raise them up. Now, boys still need their mamas and girls still need their daddies. Amen? Okay? They still need each other. Here's why. A daughter learns from her father how a man should treat her and how or what the expectations should be. Right? So later on, she goes out and she looks for a man, not a boy. Because hopefully from her father, she learned this is what it means to be a man. This is my standards based on, I know this is what a good man is. Same thing, young men learn from their mothers. They are searching for a spouse. They learn to seek a godly woman or to seek a good woman. Why? Hopefully they learned what a good woman was from their mother. And there's this whole thing like, and you could get in this whole family dynamic. Mothers tend to be nurturers. You know, fall down, get a boo-boo, they want the mama. Babies are sick, they want the mama. Right? Okay? The rest of the time, who do they want? They want daddy, because daddy's fun. Daddy plays, daddy wrestles, daddy this, daddy that. Okay? And there's a whole dynamic there on my Man Up series that I talked about in the Man Up series about how inside every man, men never truly grow up. The little boy's always alive in them, and that's why the kids love their dad, because in there he's still a kid. Mamas grow up though. Mama's the one that's strict and and all that stuff, and daddy's like, don't tell your mama we had ice cream. You know what I'm saying? And like there's that kind of dynamic, but it's good. It's good for the kids because they get that experience. And I'm painting broad strokes there because I know that's not every father and every mother. But if you look at this right here, it talks about wives submitting to your husbands, okay? And I don't want to get into the gender wars here, all right? But there's a reason why I should be submitting to their husbands, okay? First of all, because God said it, not me, for somebody wants to take an axe to my head, okay? But husbands need to be submitting to Christ. Ladies, you know, whoever's hearing this, you need a godly husband, one that will submit to Christ. Because when you marry him, you're going to be submitting to him. That's what you're doing. And if he has not submitted to Christ, are you sure you want to submit to his authority? Because then what authority is he under? Okay? But what it's really talking about here about submission, all right, is a husband, okay? One of the duties of a husband, it means that you are the head servant, right? Who are you serving? Head servant. If you're the head of the household, what are you? You're the head servant. Your servant towel needs to be large because you're a servant to your wife and to your children and to your employer and to God. You have to be the example for the rest of the family of what a servant should be. So before the feminists get upset, I ain't submitting to my husband, it's like you're missing the point of submission. Okay? Because now there's a servitude of the wife. She's submitting to the husband, the head servant, and now the children submit to her. Mothers, by their very nature, are teachers, nurturers, encouragers. They're compassionate. Men often lack some of those skills. Can I get an amen or an oh me? Like, dads kind of rub dirt in it, let's get over it. Mama's like, oh, come here, baby, it's okay. Okay? And you need both of those. Like, you need some, and I know not every mama's that way, and I know not every daddy's that way, but I'm just saying. So you have this.
I think with the submission, too, people think submission means oppression, and that's not what it means.
No.
Like today, the sermon you preached was all about Jesus' submission to the Father.
Mm-hmm.
Thy will be done. It it's not that she doesn't get a vote, it's that he gets a vote, she gets a vote, and he gets the tie vote.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's more what submission is. When it comes down to that there's two different opinions, the husband's guidance should be the way that the family goes if he's truly under submission to Jesus, because then just like Jesus, he's in tangent with the will of the Father.
And I will tell you this, if that marriage relationship between husband and wife is what it needs to be, when they make decisions, even he is the head and her submitting to him, the two of them are one. And so whatever decision would be made would be one. Now I'm going to tell you this, husband and wives do not always agree. Even good marriages don't always agree. Amen? On me? Okay? But that being said, his interest is in her, right? In his family. Now, even good husbands make bad choices, okay? Every woman out there is going to be like, I got a good husband, but boy, he's done some dumb stuff, all right? But generally speaking, you know, the reason that's set up the way it is his role is to submit first to Christ. Why would she submit to him if he has not yet shown his willingness to submit? You get what I'm saying? And I think that's, am I kind of, yeah.
When women hear that, and when men say that, they're not, it's not, most of the time when there's a fuss about it, it's not that they don't neither party understands the biblical premise of that. They're putting other words in, like oppression, and that, you know, he gets to be a bully in the home. That's not what that means at all. And, you know, like,
and there are people that,
where I heard a very, very good testimony on it was Rick Burgess.
and there are some people who take it to, you know, that's the way that, I'm me man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's not what this means. Because if you're not willing to submit first to Christ, why are you setting the example that your wife would want to submit to you? So I digress. But it talks here about husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Now, Paul also talks about how a man is to love his wife as his own flesh. Okay? Now, this is important to understand, because to love your wife is to love yourself, right?
Get into the protection part too.
The protection part of it, but you know, you would, you know, your caretaking. Your men are supposed to be lovers, leaders, and providers to the family, and when the husband's not doing those duties, back to your point, because I know the testimony you're talking about, when the man's not being a lover, leader, and provider, that duty then falls on the wife. Now she's having to do the role of the husband and the roles of a mother. And that's not fair to her. Okay? And vice versa. If a mother's not doing her roles and a man's having to fulfill those roles, that's not fair either. It's not God's design. He set it up this way. But it talks about, you know, men, love your wives, do not be harsh with them. A man's duty is to, you know, back to your point, a husband is not to dominate his wife. Me Tarzan, you Jane, you know, the caveman mentality. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's about submitting to the will of God, putting your family, Christ first, then your family. Meet your wife's needs. Meet the needs of your children, and provide and take care of them. And it talks about not being harsh with them. It's like, look, it's not the husband's job to dominate the wife. Now, hopefully, and remember, if she's doing her part, submitting to him, first of all, if he's submitting to Christ, she's got a reason to submit to him. She's submitting to him. There's no reason for that domination mentality. There's no reason for the harshness, because there's going to be times in your life where people you love upset you. Do not be harsh with them. Remember, she's your wife. Men, love your wife as your own flesh. Do not be harsh with her. And you got to remember, another reason you're not doing that is because you're setting an example, husband and wife, mother and father, for your children. I recommend this. You know, I'm not going to say, I mean, every couple fights. Every husband and wife fights. I don't care how godly you are or whatever. You disagree. You know, but I can only speak for my family. We try not to have those disagreements in front of the kids. I'm not going to say we've never had a disagreement in front of the kids. but we try to have our disagreements privately, so the kids don't. Our discord does not turn into their discord. Does that make sense? And it is not good for a husband to be harsh with his wife, because that is teaching first of all, daughters that that's acceptable behavior, which it's not, and young men that that's acceptable behavior, and it's not. Okay, you're supposed to be being an example. So going on here to verse 20, it says, "Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord." Children need to be obedient to their parents. Now, here's the thing that's funny. It's like your kids at a certain age, man, they just love you, and you can't, like, I mean, and like my son right now, he's just right at that age where I'm cool and everything I do, and he's like, I'll pick him up, "Daddy, you're so strong," and all this kind of stuff, and it makes you feel good as a parent, but you know, to him, I'm Superman, and like I'm sitting here going, it's like, man, buddy, I know a lot of people a lot stronger than me, but he doesn't know. So I'm going to. But you get to a point where they go into this adolescence that we call teenagers, and at that point, parents become stupid. And because at the teenager, you're starting to come into their own a little bit, and they're starting to understand. And like, and something really does happen, and I think it happens around, I'm going to say around 22. So about from age 13 to I'd say about 21, like everybody just thinks their parents are stupid. And then all of a sudden they turn 22, 23, 24, and they start going, man, my parents were smart. Like they got it. You start like, man, my dad knew what he was talking about, And yeah, it's like, holy cow. Like I miss those days where I just came home and watched cartoons, and now I actually got to do stuff. It's like, so, children, obey your parents in everything. It's pleasing to the Lord. Now, going back to what I was saying, husbands submitting to the will of Jesus, so that the wives can submit to the husband, and now you can give godly instruction to your kids that's worth following. Now, I've seen this.
Parents, so it's united. And
Parents,
that's
yes.
what a lot, I think people miss that nuance, that it should be the two of you together.
Correct. And parents meaning both of them, okay? Together united. And every kid pulls this stunt, because hey, Dad, can I do whatever? It's like, and like, oh yeah, sure. And then you find out later on, it's like, well, he just asked me. The mom will be like, he just asked me. I told him no. I was like, whoops. So then the kid gets in trouble. And it's like, we've had that pulled on us a few times. And that's why men get real smart, and then they're like, go ask your mother. Yeah. But it goes on to this, as fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. Now, when it talks about provoking a child to anger, you're called to discipline your child, not discourage them. Are you with me? You discipline them. Sorry, y'all, my throat's getting dry. But you don't discourage them. And there's a way of doing that. You correct the behavior. You explain to them why it was wrong. You render the discipline, and you move on. Typically, and notice what it says here. It says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Now, that doesn't give mamas an excuse to provoke their children to anger. Here's the difference. Daddies tend to get on to you, spank you, whatever, and then go on with life. It's over. It's been dealt with. Move on. And it doesn't become an issue again unless they do it again. Make sense? Yep. Here's the problem, mamas. Because mamas do this as wives. See, my experience has been this, is that wives do not get hysterical. They get historical. Okay? Now, here's the thing about it is, men don't remember what they ate for breakfast. Okay? Ladies can tell you what you did wrong 20 years ago. And the date and the detail is flawless. But here's the thing about it is, you discipline, you redirect, and you don't forget, but you got to let it go. Because if you keep on, you're going to provoke anger in the child. You don't want to provoke anger, you want to provoke correction. And it's like, at what point do you, like, okay, it's like Jesus saying, I forgive you of your sin, but I'm going to remind you of it tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It's like, at what point it's like you never, I don't think you ever really did forgive me because you just keep bringing it up. And it's like, that's going to eventually provoke them for anger. It's like, okay, you'll keep bringing it up because I messed that up. Watch what I do next. I'm going to really mess something up now. Children get provoked to anger and then they act rashly. But this was a family structure sitting here. And we live in a society now, and I've got on this whole ramble here, but you have single parents versus two parents. Infinitely, statistics will bear this out. Infinitely, children that come from mother and father, they have better grades. The home is more stable. They are more likely to graduate high school, and they will go on to earn more money as an individual out in the world, meaning they will do better individually themselves. And that's not degrading single parents, okay? It's not. Because I know some friends that are single parents, and buddy, they work. And they, but what happens is, even with two parents, it's hard to be involved with what's going on with your children. And as a single parent, now you're having to be mama and daddy, and you're having to be breadwinner, and you still somewhere got to find the energy to be involved with your kids' lives. And it's like you're working so hard so they can live, they don't even know who you are. One of the things, and I love my dad, but, when I was growing up, a lot of time Dad could have spent with us. He spent either hunting or he had beef cattle, and he was always doing hay or working tractors or feeding cows or working cattle and stuff like that. And it was like there was during hay season, for those of you who grew up in the South know what this is. It's like you just didn't see Daddy during hay season. Like you just didn't, because he was cutting, baling, raking hay, right? And, got old enough to help him, but you're still not really spending time with Dad. You're just throwing bales of hay on a trailer. You get what I'm saying. And it's like, okay, and he told me 1,000 times, he's like, if I could do over again and spend that time with y'all, I would. But you spend so much time working that you don't get, your children don't get to really know who you are. And as a single parent, you're going to miss something. You know how I know single parents are going to miss something? Because having both parents, they still miss stuff. And so somebody or some outside force is going to step in and start teaching your children things that you may or may not want them to learn. Okay? The danger of that is now you don't have the control over that because you're so busy trying to make sure that they're alive, that they got food and clothes and stuff like that, that you don't have any influence on their morality or their decision making or how they view the world or any of that stuff. Yes, sir.
You know where you see that really pronounced?
What's that?
Is that decision made in 1965, the Great Society, that broke the man out of the house
Mm-hmm.
and left the woman. And now you see the result.
And you do have a cultural.
It's getting worse. With all the stuff that came under the COVID CARES Act, you wouldn't believe what you get paid now to be a single mother for the children. I mean,
It's amazing.
It's in the thousands of dollars. It makes me want to go grab
Did
one.
they get paid?
Yes, they're getting
It's $2,300.
these earned income credits. It is a tremendous amount of money, and now they want to increase it to $500 a month.
Well, one of the things.
All kinds of other supplements for
See, and
daycare
that
and everything
still
else,
drives the
and
man
it
out of the
does
house.
because, and then here's what is happening too. They're both, and it's hard to get it figured out. They're both claiming on the tax write-off, and it's a mess. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's still breaking it.
See where they do it.
Well,
Breaking it further
the-
apart and all the other subsidies and everything.
But you're
They're
coming in
pushing the
double
men
and
out.
paying single women or single men as much as $2,300.
$2,300.
No,
As
no,
much as.
That's what you get back on taxes, the earned
Oh,
income credit on
on
taxes, but they're warning that's what's coming up in
Even
the.
what they had paid that in. What they had work paid
It
that in.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's what, not only
They're just
are
pouring the money
taxes,
out.
No
and
wonder
this
you
has been
got
a law.
such many people don't want to work.
Yeah,
That's
Exactly,
right.
that's exactly, like, Don and I could have had a free ride to college, cause we had plenty of friends that, all you had to do was go get pregnant. couldn't get married to the father, though.
Well, I am going to say this before I move on. There was actually an individual I encountered one time, and they were talking about I don't remember the location. I want to say it was somewhere up northeast. But like I said, I don't remember the location. But they were working in education in a very poor area. I'll put it that way. Like I said, the details I'm leaving fuzzy on purpose. But they saw that the teacher had a wedding ring, and the kids wanted to know what it was. And so they explained that was a wedding ring. They had married their husband, and why? So they had to explain, and it was almost this foreign thing to this small area in this group of kids, because they did not understand the principle, because in their area it was not a custom because of the opportunities afforded to those who did not get married. And so now you have a mother and father, you have a home without a mother and a father. Now whether or not the child had access to mother and father is unknown. But I did this in our Man Up series. There was you start going into the different ethnicities throughout our culture, and it's like, it's unreal how many groups what the divorce rate is, and how many children don't have a father in their lives. And that was specifically devoted toward
among Christians also.
Well, among the divorce rate in the church is almost identical to the divorce rate outside of the church. So it's not like the church is standing its ground on that.
And you see the demarcation. Like Donna was born in '69, and most of her classmates' parents were married. I was born in '70, and I was like one of maybe 5 out of 30 whose parents were married, or not divorced and remarried. So just in that little bit of time frame, they just.
Well,
and then by the time with mine that my brother was 4 years younger than me, it was my parents were the only ones still married to their original spouse.
Well, drawing back to my Man Up series data, which is on our Facebook channel, our Facebook page, but our Man Up series, and the data there is dated now, so I'm not sure how accurate it would be with the day and time. I'm sure things have only worsened, but at that point in time, it was roughly that about half, like 50% of children born in the U.S. Would be born out of wedlock, meaning they were born without a father in the home. Okay, now this was directed toward men, so please understand that. And then out of the other 50%, half of those will end in divorce. The divorce rate was like 51%. So half of those will end in divorce. So if you do the math, all right, so that means 5 out of every 10 kids may or may not even have access to their daddy. And then 2.5 kids out of 10 kids will not have regular access to dad, meaning everyday access. Okay, and that's, and so that means only 2.5 kids out of 10 have a daddy that comes home every day. And assuming that every father is a perfect father, which they're not, but you get what I'm saying. So you start, and that's just statistical data. I mean, that's something you can go online and look that data up. I mean, it's not. I mean, you got Google on your phone. You go ahead and knock yourself out. But that data. When did I do Man Up? 2 years ago. So anyway, so that data is dated. It was a little dated then, but I'm sure it's dated now. But back to the two-parent. Why the two-parent family home? And just to emphasize this, I'm not being critical of single-parent families. That's not my point. Okay, I'm just saying it's hard to be a single parent. Okay, and I know there's all kinds of reasons there are single parents. What I'll tell you this is God it was never his intent for you to for there just to be a mother or just to be a father. Okay, the family unit was a biblical design, and part of the reason for that is that a family needed to be loving and supportive of the children. Okay, children need love and support. So the love is, sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's teaching, sometimes it's education. All those things are love. And then the support is the food and the clothing and the housing and the taking care of their needs, their medical, their physical well-being. So they have an emotional thing and a mental thing that you're taking care of and a physical need that you're taking care of. And, you know, Joshua chapter 24, verse 15 says this: "And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day who you will serve, whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." At some point, a household has to make a decision how it's going to run itself. And this is a decision that can be made, by the way, even by a single-parent family. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And that doesn't mean that, there's no such thing as a perfect family. Please understand that. Okay? But we have to make a decision of how we're going to raise a family, how we're going to live as a family. We can live it the way the world says do it. We can live it the way this entity over here says to do it. Or we can look and say, what does God say? And say, okay, as for me and my house, we choose the Lord. And that's how we're going to live. We may not be perfect, but we're going to do what we can to keep His commandments, to teach our children His standards, to uphold His law. And this comes from a loving, supporting household, right? I'm going to love you. I'm going to nurture you. And part of loving a child, in fact, the hardest part of loving a child, is correcting them. And we live in a world now that is so scared to death of telling kids they're wrong. That's how a kid learns. There's a old Western, John Wayne, Hondo. Remember Hondo? Hondo had a dog. It was a mean dog. But the dog, the little boy in the movie, kept wanting to play with the dog. I think the dog's name was Sam. He kept wanting to play with old Sam. And John Wayne finally he asked him again. He said, John Wayne told him, he said, well, can I play with Sam now? He says, well, I told you twice not to, but you do what you want to do. And he went out there and he tried to pet the dog, and the dog, Huff! And the mother come running up and was like, surely if you knew the dog would bite, you shouldn't have let the child do it. And John Wayne says, youngsters learn by getting bitten. The youngster just learned. And the thing about it is, we have to correct behavior, meaning you have to show them that they're wrong, teach them they're wrong. You know why? Because hopefully your parent, as a parent, you've done enough that you know when you're about to mess up, and you don't want your child reliving your mistakes. And that is one of the key things about being a family, is you train up the next generation to not have to go through what you went through. And it is an evil thing to try and to create a society or a culture where your children are worse off than you were. The wickedness of heart and mind and spirit to do that is unfathomable. And the sad thing about it is clearly evident in our culture today that's exactly what we're doing, because we're too scared to show our kids they're wrong. In fact, we don't even want to use the word wrong. They're just experimenting. They're just learning. How about this? I learned from the School of Hard Knocks so my kids wouldn't have to. You know how I learned stuff? My daddy knew stuff he learned, and he didn't let me go through those things. Right? And we've gotten so comfortable. Things are so easy. Push of a button, touch of a screen, that we've forgotten that all these things come through hard work and discipline. Discipline is not an evil thing. Digressing just here for a moment. Observation and stability. Having two parents allows double the observation. So there's more opportunity to see where kids mess up. I hate to tell parents this. Your perfect little angel, they'll lie to you. They will lie in a heartbeat. And I can't tell you how many parents say, well, my little child, little Susie or little Billy, they'd never do this. They'd never say that. Yeah, they would, because they're a kid. It doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean they're evil. It just means they're a kid. Kids do stuff. They do wrong. You know why they do wrong?
It's inherent in them to do it.
Because they're children, and foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. But the rod of correction will drive it far from him. Now, observation creates stability. I'm going to do this. I did a screenshot of these because I had several of them together, and I wanted to make sure that I just reeled them off for you. All right, here we go. If I can get them pulled up. So, Proverbs 29:17. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. All right? A child that knows right and wrong will do the right thing when you're not around to make sure they do. That's really, by the way, what morality is. Okay? That's what ethics is. Ethics is when nobody's watching, you do the right thing anyway. But back to the first session with morality, we've made morality fluid. It's like, no, it's not. I heard Brad Ferris, who is on, he used to be with The Truth, he Primo's Hunting Calls, okay? And he talked about this one time. One of his, he was talking about taking his daughter hunting and stuff like that, and they were talking about gun safety. And he said, my only hope through all the time I spent with my daughter is that as she gets older and she matures and she faces dangerous things in the world, she remembers the lessons learned from me, and she goes, you know what? My daddy wouldn't like that. And it causes her to choose the right thing over the wrong thing. And what that does, that creates, think about this. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. I'm going to tell a funny story, okay? Now, I don't know what this says about my sister. My sister's a good person, y'all, so I'm not making fun of her. She'll probably see this. But when my sister was dating, okay, all right, high school, she was dating, they might come in 11 o'clock, midnight, whatever it was, whatever the curfew was, I don't remember. But mom and dad would both be up. Now, my sister's 4 years older than me. Mom and dad would both be up, every light in the house be on, TV be on, whole 9 yards. They're awake. She comes home, and they shut everything down and go to bed. Okay? That's my sister. I come home from a date at 10:30. Every light is off and the door's locked. Okay? So why did they go to bed? Now, I'm not saying my sister was a wild child. That's not my point. But why did they do that? They weren't worried about what I was going to do.
Well, one reason
What?
why they did that is the boy that she was with got the message.
Yeah. But here's the thing about it is, you know, they weren't worried about me making bad decisions. They had enough faith in me and what they had taught me that I wasn't going to get into trouble. I wasn't going to be doing things I shouldn't do. And they could rest. Right? And I'm going to go on the next one here. This is 29 verse 15.
You kind of worry more for your daughters than you do your sons.
You do. Or I think I did.
There's a lot more physically and everything that can happen. Like, you know, our parents didn't wait up for our brothers, but they sure did us. And I didn't even have to be out with a boy. I could just be out with my girlfriends. Like, they had to know where we are at all times, so we could be kidnapped. Like, I mean, that.
No, I see exactly where you come from. Here's the thing about it is, you know, when, you know, my son gets old enough, he wants to go hang out with his friends and all that, we'll have a curfew and we'll talk about those things. And when my daughters want to go hang out with their friends, their curfew will be whenever I tell them it's time to go to bed and they leave my house. You know. So anyway, but back to this. the rod, 29:15, Proverbs 29:15. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. If you don't spend time disciplining your child, you won't have any rest, and they're just going to bring you sorrow, because they're going to get out in the world and they're going to see the shiny fish hooks that go by, and they're going to grab the first shiny thing that goes by. Andy Griffith did the episode with the hobo. That's perfect. He talks about that. He talks about, he's like, well, and the hobo asks him, says, well, why not just let the little boy decide? He's like, it doesn't work that way, because he's going to grab the first shiny thing that comes by. So I have to pour into him what's right as much as I can, so that he knows the difference when he's presented with it. And that's all you can do as a parent. That's why that observation and that stability is important. Having mother and father in the home brings about stability. Hebrews 12:7. Let's see. It says, it is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom the father does not discipline? Let me tell you this. It is important to understand that fathers' role is to discipline their children. Mothers, discipline your children. We've got to teach them right and wrong. Discipline is not an enemy. Like, we live in this world where it's like, and I love Mark Lowry. He talks about somebody talking about, don't spank your kids, it'll squelch their personality. And he said, my mama squelched my personality all over the house. Okay? And I'm not saying, I'm a big believer in this, the punishment needs to fit the crime, right? I don't think everything is a whooping. That was kind of the remedy when I was growing up. You just get a whooping. But I think there's all kinds of ways to do discipline, and it's not all spankings or whoopings or whatever. We live in the South, it's a whooping. I don't know what y'all call it. But I'll tell you this. Discipline has to follow. When a child does wrong, you got to discipline them, or they won't know that it was wrong.
Mama was a disciplinarian in our family. She had a thimble where she sewed, on that finger, and she could pop you in the head, and it felt like it was coming out your rear end. It hurt bad. But it only went so far.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you did bad enough, Daddy got a hold to you. She told Daddy, and Daddy took you. He took you to the woodyard.
And and I actually think there's something to that, because Tracy in our house, she is the more diligent one to, as wrongs are being done, instant correction. I just don't do that, and it's not because she's wrong. Believe me, she's very much right. She'll tell me that. So no, but she is right. Like, she's getting on to them on stuff. But dads tend to be like, mothers tend to be like this. They have radar, and they see everything, and they pick it all up. Dads are like this. And if it ain't in that sniper scope, they just didn't see it. Now, to your point, Lord help you if you ever get caught in that scope. Because now here comes the thunder, right? All right? Yeah, and it's like, there's a lot of things. It's like, Mama get on to you for this, get on to you for that, pop you, whatever. But when you ever hear these words, you wait till your daddy gets home. It's about to get real. Now, you got to picture this now. Now, that's the child here, and you wait till daddy gets home. Ladies, let me tell you what daddy hears. Picture this. Daddy been at work all day. He's been dealing with all kinds of foolishness at work. And the only thing he's thought about is getting out, because I don't know if y'all know this about men. Men, y'all back me up here. Men, when they want to decompress, they will go into their little box that consists of nothing. Okay? And they will shut it down. They may be holding up a newspaper or flipping a channel, but buddy, they have locked out. Men, are you with me so far? You could be holding a fishing pole. You could be out there riding a lawnmower, but you are just a vessel at this point. You have logged out. That computer is off. Amen? Men? So he comes home, and all he wants to do is clock out. And what's the first thing he hears? let me tell you what your child did today.
Little Johnny.
And it's like, okay, so now Daddy's got to go ready to clock out. He's got to punch that. Y'all ever done that where you clock out and you turn around and something happened and you just clock right back in and go right back to work? That's exactly what happens. So now Daddy's got to come in, but Daddy's, remember, you can't provoke your child to anger. I tell you, I can't say I'm not a perfect daddy by any stretch, but I have made a diligent effort to not punish my kids out of anger. Okay? I had, as a child, was punished out of anger, and I'll tell you, it's the punishment did not fit the crime. I'll put it that way. Amen? You ever been punished out of anger, or have you ever issued punishment out of anger?
When Daddy punished me, he had a right to do it.
Oh, I'm not saying my daddy didn't have a right.
And he put the old strap on the rear, and I remember. I didn't do that no more.
Yeah. Well,
But he never did. I think I got 2 whippings in my life.
I got a lot more whippings than that. But what I'll tell you this is, yeah, yeah. Well, my daddy would tuck me in every night after my whippings, and oh, you didn't catch that one. I got tucked in every night after my whoopings. Okay. Anyway, no, I only remember about 2 whoopings I ever got, and the reason this one I'm reminded so bad about it is the severity of it, and because I didn't, I was not even, like, it was one of those things, like, he was right to be angry, but his anger was misplaced. Yeah. And I went with a friend, we went crawfishing in a creek. We were actually, we were with some friends right up the road there, and, Daddy had left me in charge of some other adults. Well, they let us go down through the woods and play in the creek. And we're down in there in our new school shoes, playing in the creek, catching crawfish. Okay? Now, it's a wonder we didn't get bit by a big cottonmouth. It's a wonder neither one of us got poison oak or ivy, whatever. All right? And there's no telling what else was down in that creek with us. Coons, bobcats, whatever else in there. Briars, whole 9 yards. Daddy come back, and we've been down there in that creek a couple hours playing. And Daddy come back to put me up. He found out what had been going on. And now, it was only about 5-minute drive from my neighbor's house to my house. But, buddy, I got 12 months worth in 5 minutes. Buddy, I got it all. And we got home, and it was one of those things, and after I got blessed out, whooping and all that stuff, I got home. Of course, Daddy's scared to death. I got poison oak all over me. So the very first thing he does is stick me in a bathtub, trying to wash it off before it can take. If y'all know this, you can get poison oak on you. If you get it washed off fast enough, it won't, And so I get out of there, and my mama, it became a funny thing, but it wasn't funny at the time. But Mama told me, she said, your daddy, he was some more upset about that. And I couldn't figure out, and I'm sure later on, if he was explaining it a little bit better, I don't think he was so much mad at me because I was at the age where that was perfectly normal behavior. I think he was mad because he had entrusted somebody else with my safety. And that was the last time I went out there and hung out with them. And I don't know if that was ever explained or taught, or if it just all of a sudden I became too busy to go back and play with them. But it was just,
Well, the message was given. Apparently you understood.
Oh, I don't even eat crawfish now.
Oh, no.
Good thing.
Jerry. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll tell you this: I ain't never been crawfishing again. I'm reminded of Jerry Clower said when he stole 2 tea cakes from his mama, and she asked did he take them. He told her no, and an hour later she caught him laying on a cotton sack eating them tea cakes, and he said at 60 years old he doesn't eat a cookie of no kind without calling his mama and asking if it's all right. Yeah.
His
So.
mama was named Mabel Moore.
Well, let's close with that. We're going to pick up next week here, same section, and we're going to pick up with the value of education. because the two parents, something that you see in a two-parent home versus a single-parent home, is the value of education in the home. It seems that a family unit tends to value education to a higher degree than a single-parent home. Again, we're not judging a single-parent family home, but we are talking about a nuclear family and how that was God's design. So, I tell you what, Clint, why don't you dismiss us in prayer, and we'll close out.
Father, thank you so much again for this privilege to come to your house. And thank you for the instruction that we received here tonight. We know that it all comes out of your book, the book of life, out of the Bible. Thank you for that instruction. Now carry us through this day and the rest of the week and bring us back here to this house. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I called here when